Okay, and welcome to Games Under Grace podcast. Uh, appar- Apparently working title actually, because we're in a bit of a transitionary stage right now, where I'm trying to get the podcast featured on the Geeks Under Grace website. So, uh, I guess just a little bit of news about that. I am working on a new title, and but I will also have to make new assets for that before I can actually make that change over. It really depends on like uh, when um, when the people on the board will want to start doing that for me to kind of give me a deadline to work on because I'm basically just gonna have to either do it myself, which is gonna take extra long time and will be twice as hard to do, or I can just pay money to for someone else to do that for me, which will be easier. But we'll have to see. I can say at least that I do have an idea in mind of what exactly I want to do, so it shouldn't be too hard, hopefully. But anyway, yeah. Until then, this is still Games Under Grace. But don't get too attached to that name. I guess. Anyway, my name's Sam, and today I have Derek and Malachi with me. David couldn't make it today because he was too tired, I guess. All I can
Daylight
say to
savings,
that,
man.
yeah. All I can say to that is get good. Sleep is for the weak. No, I'm just kidding. It's fine.
Amen.
But anyway, yeah. Um, we talk games. That's what we do. We also write games for geeksundergrace.com. And actually, I don't know. Should I talk about this? Because Derek is writing an article for Bravely Default 2, right?
It's done. It's going to be up this week.
Cool. Awesome. Well, at this point, it would probably already be out, but when this goes up, so. But yeah, and I guess we'll just get right into it. I don't want to have to keep explaining what the podcast is every time. Um,
I know.
Y'all should know by now. Shame on you.
yeah, hopefully. I don't know.
If you don't know,
The format is
learn.
probably going to change to who even knows at this point. Everything's up in the air. But yeah, Malachi, why don't you catch us up?
Um, I went to the Hobbit Cafe today. That was
Ooh.
fun. That actually was probably the most interesting thing to happen to me in the past like 3 weeks or so. So I actually will say, unironically, I've been developing more of a social life and have played fewer video games because of that, to some extent. Sometimes I have played some a little bit. I've been entrenched in Black Ops Cold War, gotten back into a little bit of Warzone, gotten a little bit of Cold War zombies. I am just as bad at those as I have been since I was a kid. Um, so that's good. It's good to know Call of Duty is consistently a game that I'm bad at. At least I have that to look forward to at every release. I beat, oh my gosh, in the past 3 weeks, I beat maybe 2 levels of Celeste. Um, because as much as I really enjoy that game, it also takes a lot of energy to attempt it or approach it. It really is kind of like it's Celeste is about climbing a mountain, and it really does feel like I have to take a whole day to get my pack together, start this stretch of the mountain, and then we're just going to go camp over here for a little while I wait for the energy to climb the next part of it. So I'm just going to claim that I'm not bad at the game. I'm just, really getting into the spirit of the narrative. Also, I mentioned that I was having a hard time with Celeste recently, and one of our other writers, Maurice, I think he made fun of me for it, which I feel bad, but I think Maurice is just very good at video games, to be honest, because he also made fun of me for not being good at Darkest Dungeons. And both of those are very hard games, so I feel okay about it.
Well, hey, just take that energy and improve yourself.
In other words, get good. Understand?
Yeah.
The question is whether I should tell Maurice that I just gave up and floated to the end after like 4 chapters.
You can do that?
I mean, I don't know if I should be telling you this.
Is that what
So,
assist mode is?
yeah, so assist. So you hadn't started the game when I was talking about this a few podcasts ago. Assist mode gives you some options, some levels, but like it's too extreme. The most basic option I think is just you can double jump, but the most extreme option is you can skip chapters and you can infinite jump and float forever. So I got sick of the game and I wanted it off my backlog. So I skipped like 4 chapters to the chapter with the ending and I floated to the top.
That's amazing. I think I'm
And
almost done. I think I'm in chapter 5, and there's like 8 chapters, so we're getting there. I didn't want to tell Maurice. I feel like my relationship with my ability to beat games has changed a lot since I was younger. Maybe it's because I was more tenacious when I was younger, I had more time, but it's kind of like the deal where it's like you can read 6 or 7 books in a week when you're young, but then when you get older, all of a sudden it's a struggle to even get through one book. It's like my relationship with games. Like at one point, I decided when I was younger that I was going to beat the entire Mega Man franchise, like all the old Nintendo ones, and so I did. I got an emulator and I just did that. I have no idea how I will do that. How I would do that nowadays. I also beat the original Ocarina of Time on 3 hearts, I think, without a walkthrough of any sort. I don't know if I could do that now. I just have a weird relationship with games in contrast to my younger self, and I wish I could get in touch with that. But I'm old and distractible and not good at video games. It's fine. Someone else talk.
kids are nuts. Honestly, I did the same thing when I was younger, but also I think it's universal.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just video games either. Like, I went back and looked at my PhD dissertation, and I don't know what the heck it says. Like, you just get well, I was like 12. No, not really. No, I'm just saying you forget how to do like any technical skill you have. Like, you just lose it, use it or lose it, right? So like, yeah, we're way. I mean, you don't commit the time to video games you used to, so yeah, you're way worse.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything as extreme as 3 hearts with Ocarina of Time, but I definitely beat games that I couldn't beat now.
Well, I think it was also because of scarcity. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
have other games to play, and so I was like, how can I find an interesting way to replay games that I have now? Whereas nowadays, I don't really do 3 heart runs or New Game Plus or anything like that because I know I'm not going to be able to maintain the mental energy to do that when I will get distracted and play a different game because I have dozens of choices. So
Yeah.
That's a perfect segue to. I guess I'll jump in here. I've been playing Bravely Default 2 far past what I needed to play because the game is that good. It came out. I got it 16 days ago, and I've put in 43 hours, which is a little extreme. I feel like, but it only took me 35 hours to beat the first time, and then there's a true ending and there's post game content. Um, if you, I'm going to ramble for a while about this series because I am a big fan. If you haven't played any of the Bravely Default or Bravely Second, the first two on 3DS, I explain the series like this. Final Fantasy VII, whether you like it or hate it, was like a dividing line in Final Fantasy between the old 2D games, and then not only did they go to 3D, but like the style is different. You're now in this like futuristic kind of semi fantasy, but more sci-fi world. The plot's more intense. Like the whole game is just far different than the first 6.
Mm.
So I view Bravely Default as like, what if you never made that jump and you kept improving quality of life, but you just kept that old system? You still had the Warriors of Light and the crystals from Final Fantasy 1. You still had the jobs from FF5. You still had the super deformed look from FF6, and you basically just kept iterating as if like PlayStation had never happened and you just wanted to keep making old school Final Fantasies. That's basically what this game is. There's one quirk with the job system. That's where the name comes from, where you can basically, I think the idea was that in old RPGs, defending sucks. Like you can always defend in fights, but it's usually a waste of time because you just attack and heal. And it's like, why do I have this option? So in this game, when you defend, you can sandbag. They're called brave points, and then later you can take up to 4 turns at once by using those points, or you can go in the hole and you can go to like -3 points, but then your next 3 turns, like you don't get a turn. So you can really jump the gun and like try to kill an enemy early, but then your character's gonna be stuck. Or you can block for a while and then hit a bunch of turns at once. And being able to manipulate that system and kind of the timing of it, it's still turn-based, but being able to manipulate those extra turns is a big part of the strategy of the game. So it feels like it's got a lot more going on than a normal turn-based system. And of course, on top of that, there's a really robust job system. Also, you do have to use every aspect of the system because the game is hard. It has a casual mode and then normal and then hard. If you had not told me beforehand what level I was playing, I would have assumed at least hard, or at least normal, if not hard, because even on casual mode, there are some times like you want to just grind and not pay attention while you're fighting overworld enemies. And I've died at least twice just to like overworld encounters because I wasn't paying attention. And the original Bravely Default and Second had this really quirky system where you could just turn encounters off, or it even had a slider of like how often you wanted encounters. And I vividly remember playing the first game and like I just raced through a dungeon with no bad guys, got to the end, saved, and then just grinded while I was watching TV. And it's like, oh, you can't do that anymore. That's a bummer. On the other hand, how is that a good game if I like want to play it while I'm not paying attention? So yeah, this game's harder, and it loses that because the encounters are now like Chrono Trigger, where you see them on the map and they come and get you like most RPGs. So you can't just like turn encounters off. But I also feel like it's philosophically, I'm in a weird place if I miss the game where I didn't have to pay attention to the game. So I don't mind. I think there probably should be an easier mode than casual for people like compared to like the Cold Steel games. This is not easy by any means, and that there's still a few post game bosses I can't beat. Then the last thing about the Bravely the series that I'll mention is that usually, even though the narrative starts out really generic, there's usually some really weird meta narrative twist. If you know people that quit Bravely Default or got frustrated, there's one part that's really weird and it can be frustrating. I knew it was coming, so it wasn't for me. But they always do something really strange, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I'll just call it a meta narrative that's in both of those. And I was expecting that here more than there was. I will say, as a minor spoiler, but it's all the stuff that's like that is in the post game content. So if you beat the game and are disappointed, like you need to keep going because the first ending is not the ending at all. But they didn't take as many risks as they did in the old ones, and I can see why because some people did really hate aspects of them. But I would have liked to have seen them get a little crazier than they did. But they definitely set it up for more content, and I enjoyed the game enough that I'm still doing all the side quests. If I had any complaints about the game, one was that they didn't really take enough risks. The other was that seems silly, but they did not include a way to see your completed side quests. You can see your active side quests, but you can't see the list of things you've completed. So I think I'm about to do all the side quests, but I don't know because I don't know how to check. I'm assuming they'll fix that in an update or something, but that's ridiculous. And then one last thing I'll mention about the game that I was really impressed with is that it has a one-handed mode, which seems a little silly. Why would you? I mean, most RPGs you could play with one hand if like just the attack or confirm and cancel were like on the triggers. And so that's what they do. They put that on the triggers on the left Joy-Con, and then the camera is the D-pad, and then actually in this game in the dungeons and in the menus you don't need the camera. It's just for the overworld. So those become like the Y and X buttons on the D-pad, and so it's like. What's the phrase I'm looking for there? They're conditionally mapped, basically. And I was really impressed with this because we actually have a staff member who had a stroke, I think, 2 years ago, and only has control of one hand. So being able to recommend a game to him that actually fully worked in one-handed mode, I thought was impressive. And it wasn't just button remappings. Some games you can make this work because they just double mapped some buttons. But here they actually put the thought into like doing some conditionally mapping to make it work. And it's an easy thing, but if you can only use one hand, like JRPGs are like the easy to go to because they're not twitchy at all. And so it seems like an easy include for a lot of RPGs. I'd like to see more of that. But overall, it was a fantastic game. I'm still obviously I've kept going like 10 extra hours. I had some minor complaints, but I think I gave it an 8.5, which I think is good. Actually, this reminds me of I have a philosophical question about reviewing games, about grading. Let's say you take an exam in school and it has extra credit on it, and you do well most of the exam, and you kill the extra credit, and then there's one part of the exam that you completely whiff, and then you get 100% on the exam. Is that accurate to get 100, or is that not really 100 if you whiffed on part of it?
Wait, run that back. Why would you get 100 if you messed up part of it?
Because you get extra credit, and the extra credit covered the part you missed.
Oh, okay. So
like the test had 10 points extra credit, and then you got a 90 out of 100 on the main part because you got like a 0 out of 10 on one part, but then you got all the extra credit. You got 100.
Well, I guess it depends on how it's weighted, isn't it? Because a well-weighted exam should have any essential material be worth more than the extra credit can make up for it, I would think. Because I don't know. I always think I think that knowledge and your ability to obtain it is. Oh man, never mind. I had a thought there, and it wasn't going anywhere. All of a sudden, you throw me off.
And it's
zero out of 10, Malachi. So So my point is this: I was trying to figure out what to grade this game, and I feel like if I was going to write down categories and like list, like mechanics and story and plot or whatever, there are a couple parts where I really give them the lowest credit they whiff, but there are a couple parts where I would give it a bunch of extra credit. So like, do you is that what you do? Because normally when if you're going to write down categories, you usually don't put like 11 out of 10 on anything.
Mm-hmm.
So well, I'm debating to what extent you should forgive big flaws when you're scoring a game if they kill it in so many other ways.
I mean, I would think when you're grading a game, you're grading the overall experience by the average of parts of it. So I would consider if one section of the game was a complete failure, that it would weigh it down significantly. But it is complicated, though, isn't it? Especially because of how long games are. Because if there's an entire like 10 hours of the game that you would say, I hated this part, and this is a complete failure of this part of the game, but you have 30 hours or 10 out of 10, that really means you only like three-fourths of what the game has. And it's almost kind of like you're separating them into two different games entirely because of how long it is. Like, I don't know. It's different from, say, a movie where, you can dislike aspects of it. But even then when it comes down to it, it's only really 2 hours. And so saying, oh, 10% of the movie I didn't like, it's just significantly less amount of time than disliking a huge part of a property. I don't have a great answer, but it's worth thinking about, I guess.
That is a good point about like Tales of the Abyss. If you ever played that game, the first 10 hours of that game suck, and then it's amazing. But here, it's not. None of the. It wasn't really a part of the game, like a sequence of the game that was bad. There were just a few quality of life things that I'm like, come on, guys, you could have done that so much better. And then, but I felt like the game was such a great package overall that I felt like I shouldn't hit it for those.
Well, I think like
Yeah, and I think ratings are always more about just like, is there something worthwhile to find in this game? Um, and so I think on our rating system, it's you rate the overall categories, but then your final score is just I forget what our like specific review sheet says, but it's like, is this an experience worth having? Is the question you're asking at the end of the day. That's a question that only you can answer as a reviewer. Um, and your goal is one reason why we don't just have review scores is because you go in depth as to like, this is a bad part of the experience, but here's why it's worth sticking around through that part. So if I give this game a 7 or above, it says, okay, I know there are sketchy parts of it that I don't like, but I still consider the experience worth having, and here's why.
it's funny that you mentioned that actually because when I was going through the third chapter of the Silver Case last week, uh, I decided to like semi like half play it and then half do research because there's a lot of extra material about that game and its sequel. Because Suda51 likes to tie in a lot of things that are similar, that are very similar or somewhat interconnected with his older games. And I actually came across a fairly old IGN article where the reviewer, oh man, I need to find the article again because it was honestly a really good read. He rated the game low, like I think he gave it a 5, like a 4 out of 10, if I remember correctly.
I
But
just
like,
how much IGN also rated Fortnite at 9.6.
yeah, but the thing is like he rated it a 4, but he did that at the very beginning of his review, and then the rest of the review was just like, now here's why I think you should still play the game, which was really interesting. And it's just like, oh, it was probably around that time where IGN like wasn't was still like very was still very free with how they allowed uh, critique and scoring, and they probably didn't have to worry so much about like like ha- having good word, having good name attached to any of their connections, as it were. Um, so it was really refreshing to see like this old review where it was just like, yeah, honestly, the game isn't really that much fun to play, but experiencing that game by itself is so interesting that that like he actively encouraged people to pick up the game regardless. And that was even before um the HD release even came out. I think he was still reviewing the old PlayStation version, which is crazy to me because like even before then, or rather before the HD ports, there were a lot of things about the original version which would make it unplayable by today's standards, especially for a visual novel type game or even like a semi exploration game where like the puzzles themselves are really obtuse and really hard to solve, whereas in the HD remake they just straight up give you a button that just solves it for you if it's too difficult to solve. So so I think it's like uh, when it comes to scores, it's really just like, well, at least for me personally, I think it's just like when you're looking at the product itself, it's just what you think objectively um, is what makes the game is like the quality of the product itself. But then the purpose of the review is to go into the points that you like or dislike about it that make you think it worth still playing. Like I think like for me personally, I think all the games that I've reviewed for Geeks Under Grace are all still worth playing. Um, even though like I would say, um, oh man, there was a game there was a game I reviewed a long time ago, like basically at the start of when I started writing, um, that I would say looking back on now is just kind of mediocre, but I still think it's like a good enough time to play. But then there's also a game, Paprika or Giraffe and Paprika, which was a game that was given to us by the publisher, and I rated it somewhat positively. I think I gave it like a 7 or close to an 8, maybe. But honestly, thinking back on it now, it's more like a 6. But because like the game's really rough, and like thinking back on it now, like it's very clearly like a rough, like it plays almost like a rough draft of a game. Uh, but it's still playable. That's the thing, right? So it's like it's not particularly outstanding compared to how I thought of it initially, but still think it's a game worth playing, even if I were to rate it like a full number lower than what I gave it before.
Did you mean Giraffe and Annika?
Oh, I said Paprika, didn't I? Yeah, I meant Giraffe and Annika.
That's close, kind of.
Yeah. I would like to see a sequel to that game because I did like what they had going with it. It's just like it still felt kind of half baked in the oven, but I could see what they were going with it. Anyway, that's another thing aside. But yeah, to really answer your question, Derek, I think it's like, you know, you're free to score it however you like, and if you want that score to reflect what you personally think of the game itself, or whether you want it to reflect the quality of the product itself, that's gonna be up to you, really. But I'll just say for me personally, I think it's like I'll I would say like I allow my opinion to leak in about like 20% into my influence, or rather its influence into the score I ultimately give it. But I think it should reflect the objective quality of the product itself. Um, like you wouldn't give like a game like Annoying Stick a 10 out of 10, um, even if the company that made it were paying you like $1 million just give it a 10 out of 10 because it's a huge sponsorship deal. It's
I
like
was
I
gonna
would
say,
still be.
for $1 million.
I think I'd still my credibility for $1 million.
Yeah,
Oh,
easy.
I can't
That's my
believe you
credibility for
guys.
like
No.
$2.
Well, I mean, I probably would too. Things are
If
kind
you
of rough
said
in
like
the market.
$100, man, maybe I probably wouldn't sell it.
Yeah.
Did we mention that we're Christians?
Sell
Also,
out.
I think
That's what you should do. Anyway.
Somewhere
you've
in the
convinced.
Bible it says, "Don't sell your credibility as a game reviewer for $100, but $1 million is okay."
Yeah, that is. I think you've convinced me to go change it to a 9, but I'm not going to. I feel like objectively the game is a high 8, but in my heart, it's at least a 9.
Maybe
Sam, you've been playing anything else besides
That's
a 4?
fun,
Besides a 4 out of 10?
Oh, the 4 out of 10. Yeah, I'm totally gonna drop Silver Case. No, um, yeah, Silver Case. Oh boy, just that game's slow going. Like, if I haven't mentioned it before, I'll say it again right now. Um, that game is really tough to get through. Honestly, there's a lot of text to go through. And I just finished up like all the placebo chapters up to the third case. Um, the third case is probably like some of the more it is probably like where it starts to lose it starts to lose me a bit. Like, don't get me wrong, the third chapter is really interesting because it's basically like you're trying to find the president of a company, but but there's also some intrigue uh with like a cover up of a murder case that happened in like a secluded village that suffered from uh some chemical waste that got dumped into its river. So it's starting to get really intricate, but it's also starting to get like really out there. Like uh there's like 2 serial bombings that happen in that chapter, and I'm still not even really sure what that was about. Like, I'm not even sure if it was actually related to the subterfuge um, that happened at the village either. It's wild. Like, that's all I can really say because I don't want to fully spoil the game. But I'm sure even the details I'm giving to you right now, uh, as much of a spoiler as they are, it's still just like, what are you talking about? Um, but yeah, Silver Case is still a fun time, if not proving to be one of the more arduous reading experiences I'm having because there's so much to get through. Like, um, I have screenshots saved uh, of emails in game, and all of it is just like, hey, these are interesting carnivorous plants that exist in our world that we've discovered circa 1996 or something. I'm like, hey, this is kind of interesting. Does this have anything to do with the game? Probably not. I don't know. But but yeah, I mean, I guess like I still say I recommend it so far. Um, if you want, if you want to read a book that's also like weird and abstract.
The Book of Mormon.
Wait, the musical or the book itself? Actually,
The musical's more entertaining than the book.
yeah.
I've watched and read both of them, and the book is a little weird. But no shade on our Mormon listeners. I'm sorry.
But yeah, yeah, still trudging through the Silver Case. I'm still enjoying myself, which I'm very happy to report. I thought it would be losing steam with it, honestly, but it's just like it takes a little bit at a time to just get through that. It's a lot of reading, but like I said, I'm still enjoying it. Haven't lost energy with it. Um, and I'll just get through stuff real quick. Um, so I played the Outriders demo. I'm gonna be writing a preview. I'm finishing up my preview article for that. Um, all I can say is pretty straightforward game. Not anything that's like a particularly oh wow, like oh wow standout type of game, but People Can Fly have proven to make just really solid shooters. Honestly, like if you've ever played Painkiller or Bulletstorm, and I think they handled one Gears game actually. Like you playing the demo, you can feel that influence from all those games in Outriders. I find it hard to say if I'd be willing to pick up the game at full price. I don't know if it's really worth like a full 60 or 70, whatever it's gonna go for when it comes out. Um, but I will say I enjoyed my time with it. I like the classes. Mixing up gunplay with elemental skills is always a fun time. Basically reminds me of Borderlands, which I'm okay with. Let's see. I also played Everhood. Um, Someone in our chat lightly mentioned that game. Uh, the Steam page says influenced by Undertale, but honestly, I get more of a Deltarune vibe from it. If any of you played that game,
Well, that is the sequel to Undertale, right?
Yeah, but it's substantially different to a
well,
degree.
technically, we just don't know yet because only the first chapter has come out. So
I was about to ask if that was still the case. See, I'm waiting. I haven't started it because I'm waiting for the whole thing to come.
yeah, that might be the best case to do because who knows how long Toby Fox is going to take to play it. But anyway, Everhood, uh, I guess I would describe it as parts Deltarune, parts Undertale, parts rhythm game, which is weird. Um, it's pretty psychedelic. There are some uh, there's some dialogue and text uh, in that game that seem to that seem to be trying to like sell it as like a much deeper experience than what seems to be on the surface. I'm not too sure. I think I'm close to the end of the game actually right now. I'm not gonna say what I'm doing right now because it's kind of a heavy spoiler actually. But just going off of the available all the available achievements, it does seem like it will require multiple playthroughs to understand the full context of what's going on because I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but it's listed in the achievements if you look at it, so it's fine. There seem to be these things called absolute truths, and I'm not exactly too sure how you get them because when I got the first one, I died at a certain part, and I wasn't actually sure if that's what was supposed to happen. I think it was, but then there was a later part where I had to play through a fairly complicated rhythm sequence, I would say, and that's when I got the second absolute truth. So I don't know. And honestly, my feelings on it are kind of mixed because aside from like trying to figure out how to get these absolute truths, the game itself is I would say it's somewhat difficult, but not too difficult, honestly. It's probably going to be hard for a lot of people, for some people to play too, because it has a lot of visual effects that they throw in that are pretty crazy, honestly, and may make it difficult to even see what's going on. Um, Thankfully, this one they did have a warning on it. Looking at you, Cyberpunk, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess, I guess I would say I'm still interested, but honestly, um, my opinion on it is too split down the middle to give it a hard recommend, really. but at the same time, it's only like $14, I think, on Steam right now, or $15. Um, so yeah, and then lastly, I don't even know how to describe this. So there was a new Japanese mobile game that released 2 weeks ago called um, Uma Musume Pretty Derby. Full English would be uh, Horse Maidens or Horse Girls, I guess. I think Horse Girls is more accurate. Horse Girls Pretty Derby. Um, and basically, so if you didn't know this about Japan, they have a huge horse derby fandom over there. Literally billions of yen get generated every year. That's how popular the horse derby is over in Japan. So, company side games, with their millions of money that they continue to have, they just decided. Well, okay, not just decided. To be perfectly honest, this was a project that started back in 2017. And they were planning to release the game back in 2019, but couldn't because of COVID, so they had to delay it. And then it came out this year. But basically, Pretty Derby, I'm just gonna refer to it as that right now. It's a mobile game that combines. That's also uh, a development sim. I guess the best way to describe it. Like I can't even call it similar to The Sims, because The Sims is more like a lifestyle simulator. This is more like a training simulator where um, you pick a horse girl, uh, silly as that sounds, and then you manage her training schedule to develop certain stats, and then at certain times during the schedule, she'll have to race. She'll have to race certain certain tracks or heats, and then hopefully you get first place. And considering this is all in Japanese, I basically struggle getting first place in every race almost every time. But I don't know. I guess like training sims are secretly like one of my most favorite genres, because there are other games like this. Like I guess like one of the closest ones would be that Lovecraftian development sim that came out a while back on Steam. I forget the name of it exactly, but yeah, I guess another example would be like Princess Maker, or even oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name right now. What's it called again?
Barbie's Dream House.
No, at least I don't think so. I haven't played uh, a Barbie horse game, so I can't really say.
You're missing out. Popular, amazing immersive sim experience.
Yeah.
Okay, while you're thinking about it, I have to clarify about the horse girls.
Yeah.
Okay, first off, I've been Googling while you've been doing this. They're not girls who train horses. They are girls with horse ears and tails. Like they're
You
anthropomorphic.
didn't say that. I just
Yes.
imagined it was like girls that like horses.
Yes.
No, they're horse girls. They're like
Yeah.
mermaids. They're horse girls.
They're
Yeah.
like centaurs, but not.
Yeah, but with only
No,
two
they're
legs.
not centaurs. They are very adamantly horse girls.
They're girls that have horse ears but run.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have tails. But also, there's an anime, so I'm pretty much. I'm not doing the mobile thing, but maybe I'll watch the anime.
Mm-hmm. Actually,
Maybe
I did watch the anime after playing the game for a bit. Surprisingly, actually not that bad. What's another cool thing about the game and the anime as well, is that all the characters are based on real horses from the derbies. So So, for example, on the game's official Twitter, the Japanese Twitter, they actually did a tweet a week back celebrating one of the horses' recent win at a derby. So yeah, all these characters are actually based on real horses. Like for example, if you look up, I think their mascot character is Goldship, who in the game is this weirdo who will constantly do who's like in the anime she's basically the comic relief, but in the game she'll just do random things like if you take first place she'll do a drop kick on you, and apparently that's a thing that the real horse actually does. That she has that the horse has been known to kick its trainers off whenever it tries to lead or anything. It's it's kind of interesting, also kind of weird, but still kind of fun at the same time. It's a lot of things really, but yeah. Basically, I've been trying to train horse girls for like an entire week, and only recently managed to complete the full schedule and win the final derby at the end. I felt very proud of that, although to be honest, I was kind of exploiting a pretty easy to race character for that one. Because basically all you just have to do is raise her speed uh, to like as high as you can, and you can basically win most races within her parameters.
Logical.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I mean, Derek, if you want to check out the anime, I'll recommend it easily. It's kind of a
Nice.
dumb show, but at the same time, still pretty good, actually.
Yeah. But you went from not that bad to easily recommend to dumb show, pretty good. Like there's a lot of chaos in that recommendation. I think when my daughter's 6, maybe when she's 9 or 10, I'll try to get her an anime with something like that. Because right now she goes, Dad, why do they talk weird? Because I watch everything dubbed. So,
But yeah,
all right, you want to get into the? You,
uh,
well, should
no,
we go
yeah,
into
yeah,
the
yeah. That's
news,
it.
or should we talk about horse girls for a bit more?
This podcast is not only about horse
I mean, I
girls.
don't know. Like, uh, I mean, I think I don't know. I think you can let her watch it. It's not terribly. It's not even fan service. There's not even any fan service. I would say really. The only problem is like the one male character in that show gets a little too touchy. Uh, like like it'll do like there'll be this joke where like he's feeling he's feeling one of the horse girl's legs, but it's because he's checking their leg muscles. And he's a trainer, so technically that is what he's supposed to do. It just comes
Sure.
off really weird. Is the problem?
Yeah, right now she doesn't even realize that people do anything more than kiss. So
Yeah.
we'll wait.
Uh, and on that lovely note, let's move on to the news. Derek, why don't we just go right into the Final Fantasy VII news because there's quite a bit to unpack there.
All right, so I'm going to do these in order of craziness.
Okay.
The first less surprising thing is that Square is doing a PS5 upgrade for FF7R, which I think every game that came out in 2020 for PS5, any big title is getting this. So it's not super surprising. And they're calling it FF7 Remake Intergrade because they love their crazy titles. And they're also going to sell it as a PS5 package that you could buy. But I think, if I understand right, the upgrade is free for PS4 owners of FF7R who own a PS5 and who bought the game with real money. Because the weirdest thing about this is that FF7R is free on PS Plus, I think this month. However, that version is not eligible for the PS5 upgrade. So you have to like really buy it if you want the PS5 upgrade.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest problems. Is just getting an actual clarification of like how this upgrade exactly is supposed to work. So, um, if you know this for sure, or if not, if you could just answer, um, does the upgrade include the Yuffie DLC that they talked about too?
The impression I got was that I think you have to pay extra, but what I know for sure is that you cannot access the Yuffie DLC unless you upgrade. So if you got the free PS Plus version, you cannot get the Yuffie DLC until
Okay.
you pay real money for either the PS5 version that they're going to sell, or you really buy FF7R and then get the upgrade. So I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Just real quick. Hey, to anyone who's listening to this, who noticed how Derek and I just pronounced the character's name differently, I don't care. You can fight that on your own. We're just gonna
Well,
continue.
we're gonna
Derek.
find out, right? I don't know if
Yeah,
they
we
should have
probably
pre-released
will,
their
but
name.
I don't care.
I'll change it once I hear the name out loud. But
Yeah,
it's like fine. When I was a kid, I would read all these fantasy novels, and then I would say these words out loud that I'd only read in books, and they were super wrong.
Affidavit. I thought it was Affy and David, actually.
I thought Leviathan was like Leviathan or something. Anyway, so that's the main thing. That FF7R is getting a PS5 upgrade. That might be enough to make me go back to it. I don't really want to play it on hard mode for the platinum, but I am a little confused. I'm excited actually. I think the Yuffie DLC will be good, but I don't understand why they didn't do Red 13 first if they already created the character model and they never gave us the ability to play as him. That seems like an obvious, easier move than Yuffie. But I think what they're doing, if I remember right, the Yuffie DLC actually will be kind of a different story that's going to bridge into where you would meet her in the normal storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas Red 13 might be like more of an immediate, like continuing the plot, but I think obviously they want to save that for remake part 2. So I think this is going to be kind of a not a prequel, but a like sidequel that is at the same time as what's going on in the main plot. So it'll at least convince me. See, when I bought the game, I sold it back to GameStop like a week later, and I figured I'm done with it. But of course, they pull this crap. So I'm a little annoyed.
Should have known better.
Yeah, I'm a little mad at Square about Dragon Quest XI-S that was not an upgrade for Dragon Quest XI.
Oh yeah, that's
so
right.
this is at least an improvement in the sense of if I bought the 7R and upgraded, all my trophies and stuff would be there. So because the fact that I played the original Dragon Quest XI and would have to start over to get the extra character content, I'm still really ticked. So this is better. Good job, Square, on making this suck slightly less.
Slightly less.
The other thing that I'm way more amped about is they announced Ff7 Ever Crisis. Now, it's announced for mobile, but hold your horses. My understanding is that it looks a lot like Ff15 Pocket Edition in terms of the engine, but it is going to be one, I think, continuous story or game, even though it's going to be sold in bits probably. But it's going to go through the original Ff7 story, not the remake, which has changed the story some. Spoilers, sorry. But it's going to be the original storyline, along with Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus, and Before Crisis, which has never been released here, and Avid Children, which I guess is going to be playable. I think the impression I get, now this is me speculating at this point, is that it's all going to be kind of in one basic gameplay engine. Like Dirge of Cerberus was actually a first-person shooter, and I think this will probably be traditional FF7 gameplay through that part of the game. But I didn't really care for the story changes in FF7R, and I really like the graphic style that is shown for Ever Crisis. I've never played Before Crisis, so I'm excited to get to that. Crisis Core is one of my favorite games, actually. So, and I'm really hyped to play this. The only thing that I really wish I knew ahead of time is they did this with Pocket Edition, right, for 15. They released it on iOS and Android, but then later they released it on consoles, and more specifically, they released it on Switch. If I knew that this was coming to Switch, even if it was like in like $10 installments, I would just prepay the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to check this out. We'll see if they expand it to consoles, but no matter which way it comes out, right now I'm very, very optimistic about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it stands to reason that they probably will, considering the way they're going to be releasing it. The main thing I'm concerned about is that I know that the original translated script for Final Fantasy VII on the PSX was, to put it nicely, abysmal. So I'm wondering I'm wondering if they're going to actually take a proper stab at it this time um, and translate it properly, so that like we don't get the mess that that was the original game's story.
I haven't read anything, but I would assume that if they just copy and pasted their text from Crisis Core, which is a much better translation, and then Dirge of Cerberus and Final Fantasy VII and Avid Children, like on top of each other, it would not connect at all. And so they've got to do some work. So I would assume that at the minimum, it's going to be one flowing thing. And they have in the past, yeah, they've had like PS1 translations were bad, but like when they remade Final Fantasy Tactics for PSP and added the War of the Lions tag, the main thing they did was they retranslated it all, and it was much better. So there is precedent where they've actually bothered and to go back to these PS1 games and fix the translation. So I'm hoping that that's what happens here.
Yeah, because like if that is the case, then you know, especially for people like me who haven't played the original game, Ever Crisis might be the game to get, especially if I want to understand the actual context of the original story too. So
I agree.
Okay.
That all sounds cool. I don't know what you're talking about, but take your word for it.
You have a PS4, right?
When you said hold your horses, I really wanted to interject with hold your horse girls.
You should have. You have a PS4, right, Malachi?
I do have a PS4, yes.
You should. You have PS Plus?
I do, yes.
Well, you should download Ff7R and give it a shot. It's free right now, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember because I added you in the group chat and was like, maybe I'll find a Final Fantasy game. Yes, I should do that. After I at least finish Celeste, so I can have beaten 2 games this year. 2 games.
Well, you're probably going to want to get that download going anyway, though.
That's true. I think
before March is
Celeste, the download to finish.
Okay, and from one. Oh, screw it! I'm not going to bother with the segues. I'm terrible at this.
From one bad segue to another.
Yeah, from one bad segue to another. Speaking of horse girls,
let's talk about Bethesda,
the
creator of Horse Girls. I mean, okay, you can make a segue to the Skyrim horses.
Let's beat a new horse. No.
Grow up quick.
Anyway,
something.
So, Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda Software, or more specifically ZeniMax Media, has finally gone through. As of last Tuesday of this recording. So basically, as far as we know, with like how exclusives will go, they didn't really say much at the initial announcement, but then there was an update. Speaking of, I'm looking at the Kotaku article for this. There was an update during a roundtable discussion. Spencer, I guess, like elaborating more on what they're going to do about Bethesda exclusives. He says quite a bit, but basically it's just like that's basically what I got from it. It's just like,
yeah, he noted an emphasis on delivering high quality console exclusive experiences. So it does seem like there's a significant shift in development focus towards exclusives, which makes sense. So they just got bought out by for a decent amount of money. But none of it really answers the question of like which games, because Bethesda's only got 2-3 games that are confirmed to be developed right now.
He said exclusive experiences. That could just be like going back to like Soul Calibur 2 having Link.
It could literally be anything.
Link on GameCube. It's like,
well,
we have DLC that comes with only an Xbox, but the whole game is on every console.
Well, okay, like here's the
But
thing.
initially, they said it was that some games would be exclusive.
Yeah.
And continue to. I don't know. It's really kind of just parsing words at this point because the tone is a little complicated. And they confirmed essentially nothing.
Yeah, like
except that some games are exclusive.
The biggest problem is just it's all too vague. And I mean, like, I don't know. Like, of the games that we know that should be coming out this year, I think, like, for example, Deathloop. Deathloop, if anything, could be a timed exclusive where it's just for Xbox Series X right now, and then eventually later on it could be released for PC, but no way to know if it'll come out for PS5 unless Deathloop did get shown off um at Sony at some point and I just completely forgot.
Sony showed off Deathloop when they had the launch, the big event.
Right. Okay. Then
the one where Final Fantasy 16 was first announced.
Right.
It's being released on PS5. I just googled it. So I think of the current Bethesda games in development, all of them are supposed to be multi-platform so far. This is just for vague future games like Elder Scrolls 6 whenever that'll come out.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the
big multi-platform because people would get really upset if they made a console exclusive Elder Scrolls, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like they just don't know yet, and they're just trying to hedge their bets, which kind of makes me wonder why they even talked. Like, why we even have this news post go out?
Because they decided to have this event. But yeah,
I will say I'm curious.
Enjoy the bugs.
I think this will be a litmus test for Microsoft. Has really tried to flip their image since they first came out 360, and they've really tried to flip it to a friendlier, like, yeah, we have the M-rated games, but they're for everybody. They're on PC. We're gonna spread this out. They're on Android. Like, you can play from your phone, and we're gonna hug Nintendo and be buddies on Twitter. And they've really tried to, like, not be the bad guy for a long time, and they've done a good job because right now I think most people think Sony is the bad guy. With multiplayer exclusivity and stuff like that. So this seems to me like this is going to test that image of theirs to how much are they willing to share with everybody else, and I think that could affect what they've been trying to cultivate with the nice guy image.
Yeah. So if there's anything you want to take from this, Elder Scrolls 6 will totally be Xbox exclusive whenever that comes out. Come 2025. Oh, who am I kidding? It's going to be like 2030 or something. Anyway.
Speaking of dates, before we go to the topic, I got to go back to Horse Girls because I was trying to figure out why is this in my brain already that this doesn't look that weird. I'm a dad of 2 girls. I have watched a lot of My Little Pony. And there's already a My Little Pony series where they are horse girls. They're humanoid, and they exactly as they have ears and a horn or whatever if they're a unicorn and wings if they're a Pegasus. Mm-hmm. That was 2013. That was 4 years before this. So this is not Japan being weird or new. This is them copying My Little Pony. I'm just saying.
And I'm pretty sure, not to get too into furry subcultures because that's a whole other podcast, but I'm pretty sure the process of humanizing and animal characters existed for way longer than Equestria Girls. I mean, that was pretty much fan service because fans were already making human versions of the ponies, to my knowledge. So yeah, it goes back a little while. I'm not gonna blame Japan for this one. I will just blame the furries like I do for everything else wrong with my life.
And if you want to know more, check out our other podcast, Grace Under Fur.
How to be a Christian and how to be a furry in a God-honoring way is the new podcast.
Oh, we're gonna get canceled, aren't we? But just to chime in real quick,
fine.
Just to chime in real quick. I did watch Friendship is Magic when that first came out.
It's freaking good, honestly.
Yeah, it's not bad for a kids show. I mean, I guess I was really excited when that first came out, but looking back on it now, it's like, yeah, it's all right. Because I pretty much stopped after season 2, I think.
Okay, if you're an adult watching it just because, that's different. But if you're a dad who has to watch this or like other crap shows, like My Little Pony any day.
Yeah. No, for
My
sure.
younger siblings also excited to watch it, and it was definitely improvement over whatever else they were watching at that point. So I was
I,
like,
I
it's not
mean,
bad.
I mean, if nothing else, like Friendship is Magic probably wasn't causing you to wanting to tear out your hair
Yeah.
most of the time.
It's
But
well animated.
yeah,
Definitely there's some Powerpuff Girls, good voice acting.
one
This is
one
not
thing
my
I will
podcast.
say about Uma Musume is that the drama is that whatever drama that does exist in that anime, at least it is real, and it is more of a realistic thing as opposed to just uh like things getting solved by magic or through quote unquote the power of friendship. um and I mean
Are
that's
you
not to
doubting the
say
magic of friendship?
that's not to say that friendship isn't one of the themes in Uma Musume. But I will say it's not used uh, as like as great of a salute as like that direct of a solution, if anything else. Oh goodness, and yeah, there's also the second season now already too. And oh my goodness, like there's a like the overarching story in that season two is got so real so fast that I was like I think I was actually on the verge of tears nearing the end, which is weird
Your
to
horse.
say, but yeah. I mean,
You got in touch with your.
I guess the biggest thing to say is yeah, racing gets real in that show. So
It's good to know you're in touch with your inner horse girl.
yeah.
We all have an inner horse girl
Well,
somewhere.
you know, it's really weird because like watching this, it starts making me realize, oh man, is this what it's like to like see your favorite sports team lose then? Because I don't know that experience, but
Me neither.
um,
I am only fan of teams, so that's all I know.
but hey, you know what? Maybe it's a good idea to step away from sports teams because in this article from Eurogamer,
Snuck that one in.
uh, hey, I had to try eventually, right? EA suspends all discretionary FIFA Ultimate Team content, granting content granting indefinitely amid EA Gate scandal. Uh,
Stop adding gate in the end of everything.
yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
For those of you who don't know, there were EA employees caught secretly selling microtransaction items online for upscaled prices, even uh, close to around 1,700 euros, which I think is probably around $2,000. Maybe is my math right? Please tell me it's right. I'm gonna feel very stupid if
Good
it's not.
enough.
Uh, but yeah, needless to say, wow, this is pretty bad. Um, not to mention there were a ton of tweets showing evidence of this actually happening, which is also pretty crazy. Crazier that
Obviously,
people got caught.
the people that did it are at fault and should be punished. But EA kind of generates this culture by making games that are just predatory.
Yeah. Um, there was an official statement that's further down the article stating alleged behavior is unacceptable. No duh. And in no way do we condone granting or purchasing player items in exchange for money. This practice runs counter to the game's competitive integrity, is a violation of EA's user agreement, and is not something we tolerate. And that's kind of an issue because maybe maybe it wasn't that big of an issue with their other games, but I'm almost positive this was a thing uh, with their previous games before, and not just with FIFA. Like I'm pretty sure it's happened with their NBA series as well as oh gosh, which one was it? See, that's the problem is that like I'm pretty sure this has happened with any franchise that EA has, especially with their sports market. And I think it's happened with their with Star Wars Battlefront, Battlefront or Battlefield, uh,
Battlefront.
with like both their Battlefront games too. So it's kind of concerning that it's just um like it finally took like solid photographic evidence for them to finally make a statement about this type of thing after all the kind of sidesteps and backoffs that they did before, where it would just be things like, okay, we'll scale back the grinding, or okay, we won't charge as much for these items, and like this is also amidst two lawsuits right now too, where EA is fighting one lawsuit in the United States because allegedly the mode breaks California state gambling laws, which is pretty huge, as well, and the other lawsuit in Canada uh, for quote running an unlicensed illegal gaming system through their loot boxes, basically saying, "Yo, that's gambling. Stop that." Uh, so I wonder, I wonder. I mean, I almost want this to kind of be the final piece to break the horse's back. Gosh, we're
It's not
just
going
constantly
to.
going
I wish it would, but it's not
with the
going to.
horseplay on this one, aren't we? Anyway,
I agree with you though. Like you said earlier in the statement by EA that they said this runs counter to the competitive spirit or whatever. No, it doesn't. This is the crap that you guys have done since day one. It's in the same spirit. Like it was illegal. So
You know, this reminds me of. This reminds me of, and this is getting in. It's not quite political, but like the way that people like oil corporations like BP Oil will do something and be like, "Hey, you there, citizen, the environment is bad. So make sure to recycle your plastics. Otherwise, it's your fault the whales are dying." And you go, wait a minute. Who put all that oil there in the first place? I didn't do that. That's on you.
that's
So
not an
yeah,
oil spill. That's surprise mechanics.
yeah, exactly. It is. I don't know. It does seem like they've created a market for this exact kind of behavior. It's like you've made something extraordinarily unattainable, so people are going to go to ridiculous lengths to pay for it, and you effectively create yourself a black market by making something that rare, um, to the point where it's almost impossible to achieve during gameplay. Like it's extremely greedy, from what I understand about the odds of actually getting those. Um, I don't know. To me, the
Yeah,
solution is simple enough. It's like take a step back and really ask yourself: is this worth the money? Is this? I mean, FIFA in itself is already a franchise riddled with issues because it's the same game released every single year without substantial updates, except for maybe mild graphical changes. I mean, the amount of money they're already making hand over fist. I'm about to get angry. I'm gonna stop.
well, when my daughter was 3 or 4, they used to have like when we could actually go to stores before COVID. Like they had these blind bags toys that are like basically Magic the Gathering style randomization on like tiny little kids toys. And we were about to sit down and have a talk. And I'm thankful like since COVID, she hasn't been inside a grocery store for like a long time. But
So my
like
family and I actually we used to collect those. We had the blind bag Lego Harry Potter series, except we successfully gamified it because if you're smart, you don't, it's like you have a certain amount of figures and you have to buy a figure, and it's like, oh, which am I going to get? Is it going to be Harry or Dumbledore or whatever? Oh, it's another Harry. We already have 5 of those. Better buy more so I can get the full set. Instead, what we learn to do is we learn to identify certain characters by the feel of their like headpieces and different parts. And so we collected the entire set of figures because we just go through the store. My parents were like, all right, go feel up the Harry Potter bags. And we just go through and just like slowly feel them and be like, oh, yes, I think it's this piece. And that's how we just collected the entire thing. And so that's my victory against corporate greed, I guess.
Oh wow,
I'm writing that down just in case this ever becomes a thing again.
that's amazing.
I'm pretty sure they still have Lego grab bags. We haven't had the energy to do it again. We have enough figures as it is. So
It's another one of those things that you could do well when you're a kid, and now you just don't have time for that.
well, yeah, because my parents. It's also a double win for my parents. So they'd be like, "We got shopping to do. Go feel the grab bags for a while, and we'll see y'all in a couple hours." So
All right, we got grab bags and horse girls. Let's move on to whatever philosophical topic we're supposed to talk about next.
what is free will? I'm just kidding.
Free will in
It's kind of
games.
hard,
Well, I'll tell you about a little thing called Ludo Narrative.
Oh man, I'd love to talk
It's
about
being
this.
able to choose your own.
It's
It's being able to choose your own toy. That's what free will is.
Choose your own toy. Oh
we
god.
could talk a lot about the illusion of choice in games and the Ludo narrative, which is my favorite word. It's just a fun one to say.
I think almost every video game discussion that we've had on the podcast has been in some way related to Ludo Narrative, honestly. But
Talk about Ludo narrative dissonance, which is another fun
narrative
thing.
dissonance.
Honestly, if you guys,
There's like
using the
way
phrase-
smarter people who can talk about that than that kid.
if I understand the phrase correctly, if you guys have a 3DS, you should play Bravely Default and the second one because those are the games that twist. I think when I said meta narrative earlier, I meant that Ludo narrative.
Mm.
But yeah, there's some very weird things they do at the end.
That's on my list.
All right.
To play.
Sam, set us up.
Well, this is a bit awkward because I did have a discussion topic, but I think that would actually be one that we should save. So
What?
now I'm kind of struggling. Oh no. Oh no.
But I have my answer ready.
Okay. No. Wait. Hold on.
Pause the recording.
I do have one. I do have one backup that I just thought of. No, I totally planned, and I totally had saved.
We're gonna edit this section.
Nope.
So I guess like
This is a freeform narrative podcast.
it's a stream of consciousness as it were.
Stream of consciousness. We're in the nature of William Faulkner, the great English writer.
Oh, why are you doing this to me? No. But anyway, so today's totally planned discussion topic. This was actually something I thought about after talking with Derek a couple times, and especially after he made that statement about how I somehow managed to convince him to not play games that I talk about. Are there certain genres that for us that like we would never consider playing for any particular reason?
Horse girl games.
Horse girl games? Okay, sure. That's fine. Call me out like that. I get it. This is the
Mine's an easy
alienation
one.
phrase.
See, I actually play very few genres, and part of it was that I was just raised on JRPGs and like old Mario games, so that's pretty much what I play. But even I've discovered in how much I've sucked at platformers, and the fact that Mario is like easy mode and not like hard platforming. What I enjoy, and part of the reason I'm a math professor in the first place, is I enjoy thinking deeply and creatively about something and taking my time with it, and then pushing A. Like, I don't enjoy twitchiness much at all. So I really don't. I mean, yeah, I played Counter-Strike in college because my friends did, and I was peer pressure. But I don't really enjoy anything where I have to click fast or jump fast or like anything twitchy. When I play a video game, I want to relax. I don't want to get hyped up. I don't want to throw my controller. That's why it's so annoying that Majora's Mask is timed. Like I don't, and I did throw my 3DS. I don't want to. I just want to be able to sit and at my own pace, think and be creative and like sit there in menus and maximize and optimize. I mean that's again, I guess, the math brain. So in first person shooters, hard platforming games, I'm trying to think. I will say Hades was an extremely good game. Of course, I played it on easy mode, but I felt like Hades had enough of that cerebral reward for builds and creativity and connecting things. And if you did that right, you didn't really have to play like the actual like pushing A and moving and dodging. You didn't have to do like perfectly. So yeah, I just let me use my brain, not my fingers, basically.
So actually, I want to jump in and edit the question slightly. Um, oh yeah, okay. So I was going to ask. What I think makes the question a little more interesting, possibly, is what genres do you not play, and then like what's your exception to that? Are we down to also answer that question? Because I think that's also interesting. Is like what makes it worth going out of the norm to play something in a different genre?
You may choose to answer that way.
Okay,
Well, I mean,
I'm
Derek,
going.
you did kind of answer the question that way.
You did. That's why I
Yeah, I
inspired me.
did.
The
Go
fact
for
that
it.
you
Yeah.
gave us something different. Um, shoot, I have to actually think of an answer. Oh, that's
I thought you were teeing something up.
You're supposed to have one ready if you thought of
I
this
was seeing someone
question.
else. Yes. So actually, yeah, this is actually fairly relevant to our previous conversation about FIFA. I don't play sports games. Is that a genre? Sports games is a genre, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, because I don't know what else you'd call those. I don't play sports games for a couple of reasons. Number one, I am not a huge sports person in general. In real life, it's gonna sound very like Disney movie esque. My dad really likes football, and I don't. And so I'll watch a football game with my dad, and I have some degree of pride in like my the college football team that my parents went to, my grandparents, and I didn't go to it, so it only means so much. But um, there's that. The fact that I'm not personally interested in very many sports, aside from maybe combat sports. There's also the fact that I have kind of an issue with how a lot of sports games are released. Like I know that when it comes down to it, sports is sports. There's only so much you can do with it. Um, However, I think there's a severe drought in creativity in how we interpret sports games and what ways we choose to contextualize them. I suppose. Because like, at the end of the day, yes, like I said, basketball is basketball, baseball is baseball. There's only so much you can do with that. But man, back in the mid 2000s, that felt like the real peak of unique sports games, where there's a lot of different ways to look at them. Not only did you have you had the hyper realistic sports games that eventually kind of won out the day, where it's like, oh, these are the Madden games, these are the FIFA games, we have real players playing in real tournaments on real fields, and it plays as realistic as we can get it. But then you had, in contrast, you had the more fantasy themed sports games that went into a less literal perspective of it. I mean, nowadays they're mostly just Nintendo games, but stuff like Mario Strikers, or like oh geez, are they called the NBA Street? The no Blitz, the Blitz NFL Blitz. I don't remember, but like the NBA Street series, I think is also another one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Or games that took a more fantasy style approach to it, which is like, okay, you're playing basketball, but you're aliens, or you have superpowers, or when you do this, certain weird things happen. Or that took the more narrative centered approach. Like there were a lot of games that focused more on less on like here's the narrative of being an NBA star, and more here's like what it's like to play street basketball. And I, as a big wrestling fan, I used to love the old WWE games, and have watched nearly every sports franchise take the route that WWE and the Madden games have, where you have one game released every year. It's practically identical to the last game. Very frequently full of a lot of bugs because they just rush them out for year-end releases. Very frequently, it's like a realistic sports game. And what's different from last year? We added some new people. That's mostly it. Um, so that's that. And I guess to answer my one exception, it would be It happens very rarely nowadays, so it's hard. But like anything that can take a sport and recontextualize it in an interesting way, I think Rocket League's only my one exception. I've never played a soccer game, or rarely play soccer games because I don't personally love soccer a huge amount. But boy, Rocket League, when someone took a look at the game of soccer and was just like, what if we added cars and another dimension of movement? Oh man, it's modern Rocket League is very different from how it used to be. It's got microtransactions and stuff now. You get frustrated by it, but the core gameplay is still such a stroke of genius, and I want to see more of that because I think there are innovative ways to do sports games, but I don't know. That's that.
I was waiting for you to say Rocket League the whole time. I was going to say it if you didn't. But I think I 100% agree with you that the grind out the realistic game every year with the same crap is just garbage. That I'm amazed people still buy it. But I don't want to diminish. And generally I hate watching sports because my dad loves sports. But I don't want to diminish the creativity. Like first, my mind does go to those old games, and like NBA Jam on the Super Nintendo was like one of the first. Like,
That's
hey,
what I was thinking.
let's make this game, crazy and silly. And when you free yourself from like the standard like real life barrier, a lot of opens up. And I think it's still going on more than we give it credit for. Something not only like Rocket League, but like Golf Story, or what's that game you guys played? What the Golf? Like
Gun golf. I'm gonna play gun golf as well. That one's kind of fun.
I've not played that one. So I think
Gun
this is
golf, you
still.
literally just have an arsenal of guns that you shoot at the golf ball to try to get it into the hole. It's fun.
Yeah, I thought you said dun golf like a dungeon crawler. So maybe I should make the game.
Oh, that'd be fun too.
But I think this is still happening in a lot of ways. It's just buried under the like ridiculous sales that somehow EA and the like get from these repetitive games.
Yeah, like the.
Wasn't
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, no, no.
Wasn't
Please
there
take
wasn't there a, wasn't there a review recently where like the site just copy and pasted their FIFA review from the last year because it was the same game and they were trying to make it.
Yes, you remember that controversy? I don't remember who did it, but it wasn't a controversy. It was literally just a statement about this about the franchise. They were like, they've not bothered to update it enough for us to give them a new review, so we're just going to give them the same review we did last year. And people got salty, and I'm like, that's fair enough. Fair enough.
Yep.
And I think this is more meta commentary on a broader issue that is the slow as games became more of a moneymaker, a huge thing. You just see an incredible strangling of creativity as certain companies won out in different categories. I mean, I talk about wrestling. That's probably the only. It's not a sport. I know. When I say WWE wrestling is not a sport, I'm aware of that. But you watch 2K put a stranglehold on what used to be. You used to even not just have WWE games. You used to have TNA and good lord, what was the other major wrestling promoter at the time? It doesn't matter. But instead, the 2K put a stranglehold on every other game in the market, and you're just seeing that very slowly. It's just very prominent within sports franchises. But I hope we see more. I think you're right. I think beneath the surface, there's a lot more creativity than we give it credit for.
So I'll be optimistic again. I remember when I was in high school, I guess, when the PS1 and N64 came out, maybe I was in junior high, I was terrified and convinced that after Final Fantasy VII and Mario 64 and the like, that 2D games would never exist again. Like every game would be 3D from then on out, and like those old school games would just never happen again. Obviously, I was completely wrong, but there was no indie scene at the time because I mean everything was kind of indie in itself. But what I haven't seen is that the overall, I'm sure these companies don't feel this way all the time, but these the indie scene has really flourished in video games, but it hasn't really flourished in sports, and maybe that's because of licensing. But like you can't really make a indie, NES looking NBA 2K1 because you can't pay for the likenesses of the characters or the characters of the players, and that's a big part of the draw. So I think the nature of sports licensing keeps it from having this kind of flourishing that other genres have had with the indie scene.
So
I
what
think
you're
you
really.
go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think are you make a comment about horse girls? Horse girls is what we need. That's the proper intersection. Horse racing is a sport.
Well, I
But I was
mean,
gonna say
there's Mutant Football League, but I don't think anyone plays that game anymore.
I think the issue is audience. I think you're right, Derek. There's absolutely an audience for I mean, back in the day, jocks didn't play video games. And to break down the stereotypes, that was just one of the things jocks did. Games were for the hyper nerds. But now jocks absolutely play video games. Your average dude that you meet who loves his basketball, loves his football, he'll play Madden, he'll play NBA, and that's probably one of like a handful of games that he owns because that's what he likes.
And Call of Duty.
And Call of Duty, yeah, there's your average games. And that's a connection to a certain audience because people do play those games. I don't personally. People who play these games year in and year out aren't necessarily looking for creativity. They're looking for, oh, I can play as this player and I want to play as this updated roster as this team. And so it's a fine line between meeting that audience and meeting the audience of gamers who aren't necessarily in it for sports and appreciate innovative game design, who like games like what the golf, everybody's golf, or whatever they were called, who like Rocket League, who appreciate it for that and don't need the appeal of their favorite players to sell it. So I think it's a fine line. I wish licensing were less of a thing, so you could have stuff like, oh, here's a game that has some of your favorite players and teams and stuff, but it's a little different in how we're doing it, because then you could have more of a middle of the ground draw where, oh, well, it's like Madden, but it's done differently. I don't know. It's kind of a hard thing to tackle, I guess, because it's always going to be either a generic sports game that has nothing to do with any of the real life sports, or it's going to be FIFA.
Going back to the old days of Nintendo, Shaq Fu was a thing, right? Like I don't know if Shaquille O'Neal himself like funded that or allowed that.
He did.
But I think it would require the players to take initiative here and say like, "Hey, I want people to make a silly game with me in it." But I remember Shaq Fu wasn't a critical success.
No, they made another one.
Say what?
It was a cult classic enough that they rebooted it and made a brand new one.
Really?
Yeah, there's a new track too.
I did not know that.
People, it was one of those things that flew under the radar until the internet happened and people on forums started being like, "Yo, you ever played this game with Shaquille O'Neal in it?" And like some YouTuber covered it, and people like started buying old copies of it, and it like became popular enough that they made a new Shaq Fu. It's on PC, I think.
We need Shaq.
Shaq started the Kickstarter for it himself.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, we need more Shaquille O'Neal in our lives. Is what we need. We need more people like him to say, "Hey, let's get a little weird with sports games."
Where's Charles Barkley, NBA Jam? That's the one we need.
You got a Larry Bird. I mean, this was a common thing back in the day. Is like big celebrities, hosting and sponsoring certain games. It just doesn't happen nowadays. I don't know why.
I've been looking down the Steam list right now, and I will say this: there certainly isn't a lack of trying when it comes to these sports games. That being said, it's like the problem is like you're, and I think, and Derek pretty much nailed it on the head, is like, you're not really gonna get any headway if you don't have the same like, what it's really like is just the branding of the 2K sports games. And I think that's the biggest problem, is just that like, you'd have to get sports teams involved in some way to really make any leeway, because unfortunately it's not really about the gameplay. I think at this point, because if it was, then this problem would have been solved quite a while ago. But I think that's what it is. It's the branding and wanting to play as your favorite stars, when that, and well, in my opinion, that really shouldn't matter. But then at the same time, I get the appeal of having your sports heroes in the game and wanting to play as those heroes. It'd be like playing, I can't believe I'm pulling this out. It'd be like playing the Final Fantasy fighting game, Guys Enter the Ring, and not being able to choose Cloud Strife as one of the playable characters. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
You're showing your age that you went there and not Dissidia.
Well, I don't think I was even aware of that game when I came out, but I probably should have gone with Dissidia. But you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just like you pick something that has big names attached to it. You want that big name, regardless of how good it is. It's just a fact. Otherwise, you have to go far, far out beyond the scope of whatever that name is attached to. You know, something like Rocket League. Otherwise it would just be like, because it's just like, well, what do you pick? The soccer players or the racing cars or the or the race car drivers? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, could you
So
imagine NASCAR's Rocket League? Like NASCAR getting attached to that name? It'd be cool, but it's not gonna happen.
I think the trick is that like as we have modern graphics now, it's not quite like the NES days where your graphics were always interpretive. They're not interpretive, representative of something else, and there's a little more flexibility. It's I feel like you're only going to get big name companies on board if you have enough money for big graphics, um, or if that's even the direction you're trying to go. Speaking of which, I just remembered one of the other more recent examples of, again, it's not quite sports, but it's just It's just what I'm aware of is the WWE games finally transitioned to something other than the really mediocre 2K games they've been putting out, and they did that by putting out a battle royale, um, because why not? And
Which game was
everyone
it again?
collect. I think it's called Battlegrounds, WWE's Battlegrounds, and everyone collectively went, okay, I guess that's a thing now. Not exactly the creativity we're looking for, but there's an example, I guess.
It's somewhere, I suppose.
So Sam, what's your weird genre that you have an exception for?
Obviously, horse girls. No. Um, I mean, I guess if anything, it's like, I guess for me, it would be like 4X games, or I guess like just anything strategy related, because the the farthest I've gone, in terms of strategy games is something like who like StarCraft 1, or that one session of Warcraft 3 that I played, like back in junior high or something. I don't I don't even remember how far I got. I got pretty far with StarCraft, but I think I ended up just using cheats like halfway through or something like that, because it was just like, okay, this management is starting to get a little too tough for me. I give up, but I'm too invested in the story, so I'm just going to keep going with cheats. Um and yeah, like the thing about now, I don't know if I can exactly nail down what really prevents me from enjoying those games, or like, I guess, quote unquote, uh, getting better at those games. But I guess if anything, it's just like, I really dislike uh, having to make like multiple decisions, somewhat in real time. Like, if anything, I would prefer to be able to take my time in making those decisions. But in 4X games, um, or strategy games, you don't really have that option. You kind of just have to make decisions on the fly, or already have a plan of what you want to do, straight from the get go. Um,
Amen, by the way.
but yeah, that being said, like, I guess I'm not necessarily adverse to trying those games. It's just that I would not go out of my way to try those games out personally, because it just doesn't appeal to me. But that is the one genre that makes me, where like I see a game of that genre and I just go, no thanks, and just move on. Um, but that really does, and I guess I could say that that could go for a lot of genres in my case, but uh, like strategy games in general make me get that reaction from me uh, like the strongest, I suppose. Um, and I do have a friend who does enjoy playing those games, but I think even for him, like he's kind of fallen out of playing those games now, and I guess it's just more like it kind of depends on like if you're fine with playing those games because they are a time sink as well. I think that's another thing too. It's just like it feels like a lot of time is required to enjoy a session of those games, and like I even if I were to dive in on those games, like my current work schedule just wouldn't really allow me to take that time to do so. Unless I wanted to
Never
sacrifice
quite
my
as mild
weekends.
as yeah.
But I mean, it's like, you know, working on this podcast on top of other things I want to try to accomplish. I don't really see that happening. Not to mention like wanting to play more fighting games still. Um, yeah, sorry. I wish I had the more like deeper reasons as to why I don't play those games, but it's pretty straightforward for me.
I'm 100% the same. That I don't want to like if I want to think about things, but I want to take my time. And a good example of this, Jonathan Floyd and I, when he was doing his review for 13 Sentinels, we got in a brief nomenclature argument because he'd written in the review that it was turn based, and I said no, it's an RTS, the combat. But what it is, the combat, like while there's no menus up, the meteors are kind of going, the characters are moving, they're hitting each other. But when a menu comes up for a character's turn, it stops. And so while you're debating what you want to do, there's no pressure. And then once you click it, then the characters start automating and doing things, and the guys attack you. But while you're actually making the decision, you have whatever time you need to figure it out. And to me, that's kind of the best of both worlds. I don't want to have to sit there and figure out quickly my decision, like, or I'm going to get attacked and die or whatever. But I don't mind. I mean, I guess it's really active time battle for Final Fantasy VI, except on a giant grid full of mechs. And so to me, that felt like a good balance between RTS and turn based, whatever. I don't even know what to call it.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. That. I guess that's it. Sorry. Kind of a wind down from all the energy that we had. Surprisingly, because of horse girls, for some reason. I don't know why.
Hey, I'm happy to end on 13 Sentinels. That's a fantastic game.
That's true. Um.
If it's on sale, you should get it, Malachi. You should just wait. Hold on, backlog off. You should not get it, but you should have somebody buy it for you.
Buy games. It's unfortunate.
You should have somebody buy it for you for Christmas.
Seems like Christmas is a little while back. Well, a little while ahead of this, but sure.
It'll be cheap by then.
True.
Early birthday present.
My birthday was last month.
Oops.
Early birthday present.
Fair enough. Even if it's the day after my birthday, it's still an early birthday present, technically.
We forgot to sing.
Sing happy birthday.
Yeah.
No,
Sing happy birthday. Should no, let's not.
No, we're not doing that.
Yeah. And yeah. So I guess I'll end the podcast. Sorry,
okay,
Luke Hero. I know you're really popular on Steam right now, but just wasn't worth the time for us to talk about, I guess.
But we do have a review coming on the site soon. LJ's working on it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Like it was kind of surprising how that game just dropped and kind of took over by storm. But then I look at it and I go, "Nah, I'm good."
Did you ask me when that was coming out, the review?
I don't know when it's coming out, but LJ's still playing it to finish it. But Bravely Default 2 will be out this week. So by the time you hear this, it'll probably be out.
I have access to the forbidden knowledge.
Oh, yay.
Forbidden knowledge. All right. And yeah, that's it. We'll just, that'll be the end of the podcast right here. And as always, thank you for listening. And I hate always having to do this, but please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
Dude, I was in Arby's getting a to-go order, with my mask on and everything. The bell's gone because of COVID. The sign's there. It says ring the bell. The bell is gone.
Oh, that's terrible. Well, they probably don't want to watch that bell every time either.
Just sad.
It's okay. I'm sure they'll have plenty of memes where they're sad about the bell being gone. But
This week we're sponsored by Arby's, in case I didn't know.
This week the podcast is sponsored by Low Energy at the end. At the very end. But yeah, as always, as much as I don't like to do it, but I have to, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast. Follow me on my Twitter at SkimLives if you want to catch any updates for the podcast there, and just see whatever dumb stuff I get up to over there. I'm probably going to tweet about horse girls at some point. And that's it. Okay, we're gonna send off now. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.